To discuss more about politics and religion, I'm joined here in the studio by Rabbi Noga Brenner-Samia from Binah, the Jewish Movement for Social Change, and Rabbi Meir Azari from the Reform Movement. So great to have you both here. Always enjoy our discussions. Noga, I want to start with you. Israelis are going to be voting on a new party, but really a leader to head up this country. If we look at Jewish tradition, what does it say about what is important in a leader?
Right. Well, thanks for the question, because at Binah, at the secular yeshiva in Tel Aviv where I teach, we try to look at our Jewish texts and draw inspiration for today. So that's one of the questions that we've been asking ourselves a lot in the past few weeks coming up to the elections. So it's interesting to see what kind of leadership we see in our biblical stories, right? The Bible often doesn't actually try to hide the weaknesses and the flaws of our leaders, right? We have Moses is the stutterer, right? Has a speech impediment. We have King David is, a sinner in a lot of the stories. So I think it's really interesting to see how often it's who's the leader? It's the underdog, it's the youngest son, it's the shepherd, right? And all the, right, the King David, of course, the David and Goliath story, but a lot of stories like that where the ones writing the biblical stories want us to be able to see ourselves in these leaders, us to be inspired that we too, simple people like us, can be leaders, can rise to this.
Leadership roles and responsibilities.
Right. So I think that's a big part of it. We're given in Moses, just before entering the land of Israel, his last speech in the book of Deuteronomy. And he actually says he anticipates the day where the people of Israel are going to come and ask for a leader, ask for a king. A king. And he gives the criteria, really lays it out pretty clearly, and it's really interesting to read it through today's eyes, of course. So the first one is, you shall not, first one, it has to be one of us, one of the people, right? It has to be of our kinsmen. The second thing is, the king shall not have many horses, not amass wealth, silver, gold. You remember the story, of course.
Right, because his allegiance should be to the people, not his wealth, or that it would corrupt him.
More sophisticated approach on this issue will be later done by Samuel the prophet, when the people comes to him and says, well, we understood that without a leader, without central government, we can't survive. We need somebody. We need a king. And he says, be careful. You don't need a king. The king will come and demand more, and will take your kids, and will take your money, your land. By the way, this is what we try to understand. And I think that
there's one more criteria that is given to us. It says, don't send your people back to Egypt. Yeah. That should be the obvious, right? Not back to slavery. But what is it saying? It says to Egypt to add to his horses. Yeah. So in other words, keep in mind, don't...
wealth. Don't.
Not for wealth, but also don't sell out for your own personal gain. And I would add, don't sell your people for your own political gain either.
Right.
And that's
that seems especially relevant in politics and Israeli politics.
Regarding to the Israeli politics of today, that the king or the authority has limitations. This King David learns in a very difficult way.
Painful way.
You can't take somebody, wives or land. This is what Ahav, the king, that's a powerful king of Israel, the North kingdom, learns. You can't take the land or be sensitive to other people's property, other people's family. You have limitations. You can't do what other kings, what other kingdoms are doing.
Right. It seems to be a critique of that kind of authoritarianism that is inherent, could be inherent in a king, and the kind of warning to remember that the king is really God.
Right. Which, of course, the last criteria that is, of course, given is to have the Torah as your guide, right? The values. Of course, my interpretation of that would be the values, the morals, the ethics is your guide, and have that close to your hand. The interesting thing, of course, the greatest leader in the Bible for us is Moses. And the things that we know about him, aside from, again, his speech impediment, interesting, right? Not perfect, actually difficult articulating his mission.
In any political campaign, there's a lot of attempts at character assassination. We've seen that here. But that is also seen as a big no-no.
In the Bible, we see that very nicely by the campaign that Absalom runs against King David. and he sits outside of his temple, his palace. And when people approach the king, he tells them what they want to hear. You are right, and you're right, your cases, your cases. And he, according to the Bible, steals the heart of the people. He kissed the kids, he kissed the people, and he gives them the ability to feel that he's there for them, but he's there for himself. And he is a good-looking guy. Again, we can see that the first campaign in the Bible we can see in this story. Later, Adoniah, another son of King David, when he approached the kingdom, when he tries to take over his father's chair, he runs a campaign. Again, he organized a group of people, horses, carriages, and he is running
I think it would be wrong to end with only speaking about our male leadership and our men in our history.
You have 20 seconds
to bring Miriam into the story, which of course the most maybe admirable or successful model of leadership we have is the Moses, Miriam, and Aaron, the triangle, right? Miriam, who obviously was very charismatic, and she led the people with music and with dancing. And I think that's something that we need to remember, that leadership is a joint effort, and it should be shared, and everyone brings their own strengths into it. And having women as part of that leadership effort is absolutely critical.
So many of the partnerships between men and women in the Old Testament in the Torah, but we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Noga and Azaria. Okay, that's actually it for our show. We hope you really enjoyed it. Send us your comments on Twitter and Facebook. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, here on I-24 News for another edition of The Holy Land Uncovered. I'm Jordana Miller. Until then, I hope whatever you do, you feel inspired.